me want to holler, go away. I need more peace and hope and love. Where do I find it in this crazy old world? I need strategies, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Every time I listen, Lauren and David share strategies for living, and it makes me aware. I've got strategies for living, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab.
You know, some days we need them more than other days.
Some moments.
Yeah. Hey, folks, welcome into another edition of Strategies for Living. I'm Dr. David McMillian. She is psychotherapist, LPC Lauren Leon McMillian. You know, I know everybody. I know you've had this experience. I've had this experience. Everybody, all God's children have had this experience.
Yeah, and what's that?
Somebody yelling at us.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's
People
like
be getting loud.
Yeah, they do. And, you know, I don't know what your normal reaction is, but I know what mine is, and I think I know what most of ours is.
Yeah.
It's to either shut down
mine's
or
shut down.
retreat.
Yeah.
You know, whatever I have to do.
I think it's the quintessential fight, flight, or freeze response, right?
Yeah.
Because I think when people encounter yelling, it's very easily to activate that sympathetic response.
Oh,
and
sure.
so people are either going to fight, they're going to yell back. That's another reaction people have. Freeze, as in just shut down, or flee, like run away, retreat.
There is a recent article in Time magazine, and it's written by Angela Haupt, who is, as a matter of fact, the health and wellness editor at Time, and she covers happiness and actionable ways to live well. And the article is entitled, "What to Do When Someone is Yelling at You, According to Psychologist." So that article recently, really caught my eye. And I said, and I scanned it, and I said, I got to show this to Lauren. This would make a really good Strategies for Living program.
I'd have to agree.
And so good. We won't yell at each other. We don't have to yell at each other.
Not about this anyway.
There you go. Folks, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Strategies. We appreciate you being here with us, and we appreciate our sponsors who make it all possible. The Robinson Film Center, Azalea Cleaners, Pintail Roofing, Restore Healing. You used to know them as the Balanced Life Wellness Center. Fertitas Delicatessen, home of the Muffy. SRT Sales Training, Uprising Addiction Center, and Mira Direct Primary Care. What do you do? What do you do when somebody's yelling at you? We're going to talk about that today, including what the psychologists tell us right here on Strategies for Living.
Tune in daily, find the light. Healthy mind and spirits bright. Strategies for living strong. Feel the vibe, it won't go wrong. Body moves and soul align. Catch the rhythm, feel the time. Radio rehab every day. Chase those clouds of gray away. Your daily dose of radio rehab. Lift you up when skies seem drab. Mind and body, spirits free. Living life in harmony.
And welcome into Strategies for Living. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian. In every relationship, even in the healthy ones, sometimes, tempers just come loose.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You lose it. Whether it's a disagreement with your partner that escalates into shouting, maybe it's a friend who snaps after a lot of bottled up frustration, or a coworker who raises their voice during a stressful meeting.
And I want to add one more in here that I'm hoping that I think that we can also apply all of these strategies to.
Yeah.
And that is when we yell at ourselves.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
I'm not going to yell at you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. But I think it's important that we also recognize, yelling happens outside and between relationships. But it also happens
in our head
internally.
Yeah. Angela Haupt, one of the editors at Time Magazine, in this article points out that when somebody's raging at you, there's two phrases that seem almost instinctual, she says to say. And the first is some version of calm down. Now, and the second is a quick and reflexive, I'm sorry.
Right,
those responses might feel like the fastest way to diffuse the situation, but let me tell you, as someone who has tried the calm down thing a time or two, I don't think that works.
One of my favorite ways to explain this and for people to understand kind of what goes on, it's what's called the hand model of the brain.
Yeah, and
so if you make a fist. Your thumb on the inside of your hand represents your amygdala, which is always searching. It's always searching for danger.
Okay. Yep.
And what happens is when that amygdala fires off, it finds some threat or danger in the environment. Your hand opens up, your brain flips its lid, and you don't have access to. What in the hand model, you don't have access to your front four fingers, which is your prefrontal
cortex, right? which is where it's at.
It's where you make logical, rational decisions,
choices and decisions. Yeah.
And so when someone feels threatened or is in this sympathetic response, which, by the way, if you're at a point of yelling, you are in that.
You're in fight or flight. You're in the fight.
And you actually don't have access to the part of the brain that can actually even respond to a plea of calm down.
Now that I think about it, Lauren, I thought, well, you're in fight, but you could be in flight too, because sometimes people start yelling to shut the other person down, which is a way that I can quote unquote get away, escape.
Away.
Yeah. And if I know that, okay, well, all I've got to do to shut you down is start yelling at you because I know my wife, right? Or I know my husband.
Yeah.
Well, then, so it could be both.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But either way, you are in a state of sympathetic nervous system response, which indicates, that some type of regulation is needed. And often in both cases, right? Because when we encounter someone who is yelling and is in a sympathetic response, as you mentioned, we often kind of catch that.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think one of the first things that we have to do when we encounter yelling is check in with our own nervous systems.
Yeah, there you go.
And check in and say, am I activated by this? And if so, how can I begin to regulate myself?
Do the old wait.
The old wait.
The old wait. The old wait.
What
am I thinking?
Yeah.
Oh, you could do wait or waif. What am I thinking? And what am I feeling?
Right.
Yeah. This goes with what Dr. Lokesh Shahani, who is an associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry at UT Health Houston. He says that if you tell a furious person to calm down, it usually is going to land as criticism. Mm-hmm. And, he points out it rarely works.
And often will escalate.
And yeah, exactly. And a knee-jerk apology can backfire in a different way because it signals that the other person's intimidation is working. Might stop the yelling in the moment, Dr. Shahani says, but it also teaches them that rage equals results. Rage gets results.
Well, yeah, and it also teaches the person apologizing. I mean, it dampens their sense of well-being and who they are, right? Because you're apologizing oftentimes, perhaps too soon, which means you don't even know what you've done wrong, and perhaps you haven't done anything that really warrants an apology.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting to watch the animal kingdom in this, because it's interesting in nature. We see this with our little dog. I mean, there are alphas and there are submissives.
And everywhere in between.
And everywhere in between. But, I mean, if you watch, I mean, a submissive is going to just roll over on the back, put their little paws up, and, hey, I'm just here. I'm not harming anybody.
I'm not trying to
fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and as we go into this, I can't help but think how important it will be, at least just for a little bit, for 10 minutes at the very least. Just consider, what is your experience and story around conflict, and what did yelling mean for you?
Especially growing
up, but then also, any other, if you were in certain relationships where yelling was common, it's important to look at that, your relationship with what did yelling mean and what was the consequence.
Yep.
So that you can begin to move into this healthier space of, okay, well, what are some healthy ways to manage when we encounter someone who's at the point of yelling?
That's one of the things that moves through all of the experts, and we'll talk about, several of them today, but the goal isn't to make the other person stop feeling angry.
No.
It's to make a real conversation possible again.
Right.
And that requires a couple of things. First of all, protecting your own boundaries, because nobody deserves to be berated.
Right.
While also making the other person feel genuinely heard. And those strategies, of course, are great strategies, but they have limits. So if you feel physically unsafe, or if you feel emotionally unsafe, then the conversation needs to be ended.
Yeah, I think that's important to note and to recognize that there is a difference between conflict and abuse.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not as easy to tease out.
No, it's a thin line sometimes. This is something in the article that Moshe Cohen, who is a conflict resolution expert up in Boston, he says if someone is threatening you, trying to intimidate you, or making you fear for your safety, the priority isn't finding perfect words. It is getting yourself out of that situation. Yes. And I couldn't agree more.
So again, another nod to how important it is to understand, well, what is my history with yelling and conflict?
Yeah.
Because I have seen...
That's the programming.
Right. We've seen where if you grow up in a family where really the only form of communication is arguing, conflict, and yelling, that's
then it's the known to you.
That's the norm. It's familiar.
And it may feel even quote unquote safe to you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's important for you to begin to tease out, okay, is this really safe and healthy for everybody involved?
Yeah.
And what do I want?
So, okay, well, though, we're covering the things that we don't do, so it's pretty clear now. The knee-jerk response is either calm down or I'm sorry. Either they don't work or those two are really not,
helpful.
Great choices in the moment. So let's begin to strategize here. We are obviously strategies for living. So one of the things that, we only have a less than 2 minutes before break, so I'm going to introduce this one, and then we'll continue it in the next segment and talk about it. But one of the things that you can do is you can say something like, help me understand what happened from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's look at that. Because a common response to being yelled at, another common one is to either defend or interrupt or point out everything that the other person got wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
remember the prayer of St. Francis, better to be, help me to understand rather than be understood.
Yeah.
And so to me, this is the St. Francis model, help me understand what's going on inside, help me understand from your perspective.
Right.
What are you hearing? What are you experiencing? What are you feeling?
Right, because as we know, yelling often comes out of anger, and anger is often a defense mechanism, which is hiding hurt or fear.
Right.
Right. And so to be able to just see beneath the layer,
right,
and try to access that.
And don't forget that other person you're dealing with also, just like you're talking about, you had programming. Mm-hmm. That other person had programming too. You may or may not know much about it, but it's there.
Right.
It's there in all of us. We're talking today about, when there's yelling, what do we do? What do you do when somebody's yelling at you, according to psychologists? More here today on Strategies for Living.
We all have problems every day. We all need help along the way. We need strategies for living. Radio.
And welcome back into Strategies for Living. Talking about what to do when you're dealing with somebody who's yelling at you. From psychologist's perspective, what's the healthiest thing that we can do? It's not calm down, and it's not I'm sorry. But we've introduced one strategy, which is help me understand what happened from your perspective. And one of the things that the Dr. Shahani that we talked about earlier points out, he says, when people are angry, they're not thinking clearly.
Right. They flip their lid and they don't have access to the prefrontal
Right.
cortex.
So they can't hear you.
Yeah.
So before you can have a productive conversation, what you have to do is you have to restore conditions for one. Mm-hmm. So Shahani reaches for the same phrase again and again, not just during major conflicts, but also in everyday disagreements. Help me understand what happened from your perspective. Mm-hmm. So you can use that even when you're not, that's a very productive sentence that you can use no matter what.
Yeah, if anybody has a large emotional response that doesn't seem to be in alignment with what you experienced, that's a good script, if you want to say, to have in your pocket to better understand, okay, well, that's not how I experienced it, so what's going on for you?
And the power of that statement really is only making one promise, and the one promise is attention. Mm-hmm. In other words, I'm here to hear you. I'm here to understand you. I'm not promising I'm going to be able to help you, but at least you have my ear. Right?
Right.
And so simply signaling that you're willing to listen often will lower the person's defenses enough where they can begin to explain instead of shouting. Mm-hmm. And, and the other guy that I quoted earlier, Mr. Cohen, has found as a mediator, conflict mediator, has found the same thing during 3 decades of working with workplace disputes, right? Mm-hmm. And other high conflict situations. People who are furious are often reacting from a place of either fear,
right,
or frustration, mm-hmm, or disappointment, not just the specific event that they're yelling about.
Yeah, so again, it's about being able to ask that question and listen for the emotion that's underneath the yelling, and you can help identify it for both of you, right? If you're as you listen to the explanation, for what happened, if you can identify, okay, well, they felt ignored, or they were feeling powerless, or maybe they haven't felt seen or heard in a specific area, right? To be able to mirror that back can be helpful for both of you.
We talk about this a lot. Get curious. We talk a lot about curiosity. And that's one of the fastest ways to uncover what's really driving a conflict, right? It's just get curious about it. Ask open-ended questions and then listen. Listen carefully to the answers and resist the urge to rebut every point. Nothing de-escalates anger as much as listening and validation. But if you are doing the ego thing, right, and you're listening to a point and then you're trying to debut that point, okay, well, you've just sent a different message from I want to hear you
to I want there's separation, and I want to quote unquote win something here, win an argument, so to speak.
Right.
And that's not productive for
anybody
involved.
For anybody. All right, another thing you can do, another strategy. I can see how important this is to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that one's great. Because when you raise your voice, that's an indicator that you've been triggered. Something really triggered something deep within you that either felt that it violated something within your value system, perhaps, right?
Yeah. I mean, think about the last time that you were furious. And then when you get that into your mind, the chances are you weren't, in that first 30 seconds, you weren't looking for somebody to solve the problem. You wanted to know that you were understood and wanted to know why it matters to you. And so that's why psychologists recommend starting with validation. And it's validating to say, I can see how important this is to you. Not because it's excusing the behavior.
Right.
But because it helps a person feel heard enough to, okay, let's move forward. If somebody's yelling, y'all are stuck, yelling's just an indicator for stuckness.
Well, like I said, it's an indicator that we've gone into sympathetic response, and so
which is stuck.
Well, you cannot move forward in a healthy, logical way until we have come back down into a regulated state where we do have access to our full brain capacity. And so engaging in something like being able to validate, I hear you, and it makes sense that you're angry.
Yeah, and I can see that you're passionate about this. Yeah.
All of that helps to bring someone back down into regulation.
Any words you can use like that is acknowledging that the person's feelings make sense from their perspective. It's not conceding that their behaviors or their conclusions are justified. So the key here is to validate the emotion. You're not validating the behavior.
No,
the validation of the emotion is different. So explosive anger is usually a secondary emotion.
Right.
And underneath the yelling is often something way more vulnerable, like fear or hurt or sadness or even shame. A friend who's furious that you canceled plans at the last minute, for example, isn't as furious as canceling the plan as maybe he or she feels unimportant.
Right. Yeah. And so I think I keep thinking as we're talking about this, the idea that when someone reaches a point that we're yelling, that's coming from a triggered response. And what that means is that immediately if you can understand that a person yelling is not the age that they appear to be. Okay? The person
I know where you're going
the
here, I think.
person who is yelling is coming from a hurt child, most likely.
Yeah, probably.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's about approaching the person as you would appropriately a child, not condescendingly, but with these tools of curiosity and validating the emotion and asking, okay, how can we together? I mean, I'm thinking of the example of a child maybe throwing a tantrum, right? At the store, even for wanting something, right? To which I would respond, hey, you know, I can understand that you're upset that we can't get this, right? And so you talk through the emotions and you validate, I can see that this means a lot to you, and that you're having big feelings. It's still not going to change that the behavior is inappropriate. How can we move through this together? I'll help you to move through the frustration, but I can't, solve it exactly.
You're talking about not going to the aisle where the duct tape is then.
Exactly. Well, and then also to keep in mind that likely it's happened over and over again. And that you've got layers upon layers of hurt and fear. Now, healthy anger can be a form of fire or wall or boundary within
It can help move people forward in their lives and in relationships.
It's an indicator of something being important to you and a boundary being crossed.
Yeah, so if you say something like, I can see how important this is to you, or I can see why that would be upsetting, what you're really doing there is you're recognizing the emotion without suggesting that the outburst is acceptable.
Right. Yeah.
And so then, okay, we can calm the situation down where we can move forward in the conversation.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do is, and you have to use your thought process here, but the words start with "you're right that ... So, what can you that you've heard? What can you agree? Somebody's furious, so you're listening to whatever's coming. What can you agree with? You probably feels like the last thing you want to do is to agree with somebody who's furious. Most of us worry that saying you're right means admitting defeat or taking blame for something that's not our fault. But the experts say that in this context, that's not what this phrase is about. Instead, it lowers the other person's defenses enough where the conversation can move forward.
Right. And I think it's important what you shared, right? That validation is not the same as agreement.
No.
But to be willing to look for what it is you can agree on.
Yeah, you're right that and fill in the blank.
I want to put a little asterisk here, right? Because I think some people would be tempted to say, you're right, but. Yeah. And that is not
Stay off your butt.
At all.
Stay off your butt.
Yeah, stay off that at all, because that's going to erase anything that you just validated.
Yeah.
And I think people have a tendency to do that, so I think it's important.
In any conversation, be careful with the buts, because you're right. In most cases, the but, whatever comes after that, is going to erase the goodwill, whatever goodwill that you may have created, But it starts with, you're right that ...
You're right that this hurts you. Yeah. Right? You're right that this wasn't working.
What do we do? What do we do when somebody's yelling and so angry and furious? What do we do to keep the relationship and the conversation moving forward? We're talking about that today here on Strategies for Living. Be right back.
We all have problems every day. We all need help along the way. We Strategies for living radio.
And welcome back in. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillian, talking today something that we can all use, which is what do you do? What do you do when you're getting yelled at? And you know, instead of calm down, that doesn't usually work, or I'm sorry, you know, that may not be the message that you want to send. We're talking about other strategies that the psychologists agree are healthier ways to approach this. Okay, here's another one. Now, this is, you know, what you're saying here is a little longer than we've been talking about, but bear with me.
Okay.
I'm willing to talk, but not if we're yelling at each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
So you're making a statement here, and you know you're really drawing a boundary down. So if somebody starts shouting, you know, you're across the dinner table and your partner's, you know, shouting at you, or a customer's yelling across the counter, it's of course it's natural that you want it to stop, and that's why we go to the calm down so often. The trouble is that those words "calm down" almost never have the intended effect.
Right.
Rather than hearing them as an invitation to take a breath, angry people are going to hear that as judgment about how they're behaving.
Yeah.
So think about this. I'm willing to talk, but not if we're yelling at each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is about knowing where your boundary is.
Right.
Right. And this is about monitoring the other person's response, but also, and maybe even more especially so, your own. Right. So if someone's yelling and you find yourself in also catching, whether that, you know, whatever your own internal signals of fight, flight, or freeze may be, your heart starts racing, and
right.
you know, you feel the need to retreat, run away, or yell back.
Yeah.
If you find yourself in that space or escalating to that space, it's going to be important for both parties that you be able to set this boundary of, you know, I need to take a break and come back when we can talk in a calm manner, because I'm not in a space to do that either,
yeah.
Right.
Then you want the conversation to be respectful and stay respectful.
Yeah.
And so this one is an indirect hint, but not a direct criticism of somebody's behavior.
No.
The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to create the conditions for having a productive discussion. That's really where we're going.
Right.
That's what you want to get to. Here's another one. Here's another strategy. I have an idea that might help. You want to hear it? Okay. So one of the psychologists say that one of the biggest mistakes people make during an argument is trying to solve the problem quickly.
Yes.
Trying to solve the problem too soon.
We have a lot of fixers in our society.
Yes.
And
I think we men are natural fixers, right?
Yep.
We're inculcated that way. We want to help. We want to do something. But if somebody's emotionally flooded, they're usually not ready to hear solutions. Instead of listening, they often just want, you know, to vent out, have another chance to explain why they're upset. So hold off the advice until the other person has a chance to get the venting over with, get the venting completely out. And hopefully you've invited them to, okay, well, we can't conversate with yelling. We're not going to, if we yell at each other, we may as well just stop. That's the boundary. But, you know, we want to get both parties to the point where, again, you know, using your brain analogy, instead of that back thumb of the fist, you know, we want to get to those frontal fingers. Right.
Yeah, you want to be able to bring your fingers back down. I mean, in the analogy, the lid is flipped, And so your four fingers are up and expose the
Right.
amygdala underneath, right?
Your lid is flipped. I like that. Yeah. Okay. You might even practice doing that. Just with your hand to be a reminder.
Just to remind yourself.
To remind
okay,
yourself.
Where am I?
Yeah.
Do I have access?
And if my fingers are up, I need to figure out a way to get them down.
The secondary part of that, well, really the primary part, is understanding what is it, what tools, what techniques, what skills, what methods work for me to help bring those fingers down, to help bring me back into regulation. And you need not just you need a couple different methods. You need some that can get you there in 5 minutes. You need some that could take longer. You need you need a toolbox full of ways to regulate your nervous system and bring yourself back into regulation.
Right.
So that you can at any given moment pull from.
So you use this one, man, when it kind of feels right to offer an idea. Mm-hmm. And what you're really doing here is asking permission.
Yeah.
I have an idea that might help. You want to hear it?
Mm-hmm. And be willing to hear no.
Sure.
Be open to hearing that.
And be open to hearing it and saying, okay, well, let me know.
Let me know when you're
ready.
Let
me know when you're ready. And
we'll talk about it.
We'll talk through this. Yeah. And we can put our heads together and we can probably come up with a solution that works for both of us.
And if you've put down the boundary of yelling, at this point, and if you are in a space where you have enough energy to hold space, you can say, well, if you don't want advice or a solution, I'm here to listen, as long as, then you set your parameters, right? As long as it doesn't escalate to yelling or...
And that's going to go into this next one, the last one we're going to talk about, because even if you say everything, quote unquote, right, some conversations simply aren't ready to happen. Mm-hmm. So if the other person is just too overwhelmed to listen, too angry to think clearly, too set on fighting to engage productively.
And there are people who
And there
are.
Yes. You can say something along the lines of, I want to hear you, and I can't do that while it's at this level. Mm-hmm. And you hear those words. You're not youing. You're not, I want to hear you, and I can't do that while it's at this level. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference from, I want to hear you, and I can't do it while you're at this level.
Right.
Right. That feels blaming. That feels like an accusation. But I want to hear you, and I can't do that while it's at this level, just says, hey, I really want to hear what you're saying, but
I don't have the capacity.
I can't do it.
Right.
Yeah. It's not within me to be able to do that. And so, again, none of these are, magic.
No, but they're really good tools, scripts.
They're good strategies. Yeah, they really are. They're good strategies. And I'll tell you, they make sense to me. Mm-hmm. So hats off to the author of this Time Magazine article, and hats off to the psychologist and the conflict resolution people that she interviewed. Good stuff. Talking about what to do when you're getting yelled at by somebody. Talking about that today here on Strategies for Living. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Does it seem like some of our conversations go quicker than others? Yeah. I've noticed that. This one seemed to fly by, and it's kind of hard to get.
I didn't yell at you enough.
Yeah, you didn't yell at me enough. There was a lot in this article, and it was kind of a challenge to get everything in. Mm-hmm. We didn't. Obviously, you don't want to read the article. It was from the middle of July, Time Magazine. So if you want to reference it, and you can get a hold of Time, and that's pretty easy to do online. You can go to that article. What's your takeaway from what we've talked about today, Lauren?
I think it's important to kind of understand the as we've talked about, the underlying, where does the yelling come from?
Yeah.
And it comes from a dysregulated place.
And where does my reaction to
Where does
somebody
my-
else's yelling
Yeah.
come from?
And all of
It's an invitation to do some work.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. And that starts with, I mean, the summary is to validate the feeling.
Yep.
To
Whether it's in somebody else or within yourself.
absolutely.
Yep.
To then regulate the nervous system.
Yeah.
Both, especially within you, and if you offer to co-regulate, that can happen.
Both of those then invite the whoever's involved into a sane, rational conversation,
Right.
which is
And
the object, which
if
is
it-
the goal.
And if it doesn't, that's where the boundary needs
That's
to
where,
go.
yeah. And then, we can continue to leave the invitation open. Hey, I'm willing to go here anytime you're ready. Okay. Good stuff. Folks, thank you. We appreciate you tuning in to Strategies and being with us. And we appreciate our sponsors who make all of that possible. The Robinson Film Center and Azalea Cleaners and Pintail Roofing and Restore Healing and Fertitas Delicatessen, home of the Muffy, SRT Sales Training, Uprising Addiction Center, and Mira Direct Primary Care. If today were the last day of your life, you only had one more phone call that you could make, who would you call? And what would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For Lauren Leon McMillian, I'm David McMillian. See you next time right here on Strategies for Living.